I used to believe my job was the proof that my life mattered. I believed the long hours, the stress, the sacrifice.
My name is Richard. I'm 71 years old. For more than 4 decades, I introduced myself by my title.
71 years old. For more than 4 decades, I introduced myself by my title, not my name. I wore exhaustion like a badge of honor and called it purpose. I'm sharing this today because one quiet moment shattered everything I thought I knew about success. A moment so small, yet so heavy, it forced me to face a truth. Had avoided my entire life. By the end of this story, you'll understand what truly lasts when the job ends, the applause fades, and time finally asks for its due. Asterisk. The morning I realized something was wrong didn't feel dramatic. No thunder, no sirens. Just the hum of a coffee maker and the soft glow of sunrise through a kitchen window I barely recognized anymore. I stood, there in my socks, staring at a calendar filled with meetings, deadlines, and obligations that all felt urgent. Yet none of them felt meaningful. That was new. For 40 years, urgency had been my fuel. That morning, it felt like a weight pressing against my chest. I had spent my life chasing promotions the way some men chase dreams. Every rung on the ladder promised fulfillment. Every raise whispered that I was becoming someone important. And for a long time, I believed it. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, and lazy Sunday afternoons. I told myself I was providing. I told myself sacrifice was love in another form. Nobody challenged me on it, especially not me. At the office, my name was etched on glass doors and printed on glossy business cards. People waited for my approval. They laughed at my jokes. They listened when I spoke. That kind of respect is intoxicating. It makes you feel permanent. It makes you feel necessary. I didn't notice how conditional it all was. I didn't notice how quickly silence replaced applause when I left the room. That morning, as I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed. A reminder for another meeting. Another strategy discussion. Another conversation that would end with action items and polite nods. I felt tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Not physically, spiritually. It was the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones when you've been running from yourself for too long. I drove to work like I always did, on autopilot. Same route, same radio station, same red light where. I'd check emails before it turned green. I knew the timing of every signal. I knew which lane moved faster. Efficiency had become my second language. But as I pulled into the parking lot, something stopped me. I didn't turn off the engine right away. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the building that had consumed most of my life. I thought about the years I had given it. The mornings I arrived before sunrise. The nights I left long after the janitors. I thought about the vacations I canceled. The dinners eaten cold. The conversations cut short because a client needed something. I thought about how proud I used to feel saying, I don't really take time off. That pride felt hollow now. Inside, the day unfolded like any other. Meetings stacked on meetings. People talking about projections, growth, and performance metrics. I spoke when expected. I nodded when appropriate. I smiled at the right moments. But I felt disconnected, like I was watching someone else live my life. My reflection in the conference room glass looked older than I remembered. The lines around my eyes told stories I had ignored. During lunch, I sat alone at my desk. That wasn't unusual. Eating while working had been my norm for decades. But that day, the silence felt louder. I opened an old photo on my phone. One I hadn't looked at in years. My daughter, maybe 7 years old, standing on a soccer field. She was smiling, holding a small trophy. I remembered that day. Or rather, I remembered missing it. I had been on a business trip. I had sent a congratulatory text. I told myself that counted. My phone buzzed again. Another reminder, another obligation. I locked the screen and leaned back in my chair. For the first time, I asked myself a question I had spent a lifetime avoiding. If all of this ended tomorrow, who would I be? Not what title would I hold. Not what accomplishments would be listed. Who would I be to the people who mattered? The answer didn't come easily. That scared me. Later that afternoon, a younger colleague stopped by my office, bright-eyed, ambitious. He talked about his goals, his plans, his hunger to climb. I saw myself in him. I offered advice I had given 100 times before. Work hard. Stay late. Say yes. Outperform everyone. He nodded eagerly, grateful for the wisdom. As he left, I felt a strange heaviness. Was I handing him a map that led to fulfillment, or to the same emptiness now sitting in my chest? That evening, I drove home later than usual. The sky was already dark. My house lights were on. I noticed how quiet it felt pulling into the driveway. My wife had learned long ago not to wait up for me. I couldn't blame her. Consistency matters. I had been consistently absent. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dinner, long finished. A note sat on the counter, simple, loving. Left you some food. Love you. I stood there longer than necessary, holding that piece of paper like it might disappear. For years, she had supported my ambitions without complaint. Or at least without complaints, I allowed myself to hear. I sat at the kitchen table alone, reheating. Food in the microwave. The hum filled the silence. I thought about the promises I had made. Things will slow down soon. Just one more big project. After this promotion, the finish line kept moving. Or maybe it never existed. That night, sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed moments I had brushed aside for decades. My son asking if I could help with homework. My wife suggesting a weekend trip I declined. Friends I slowly stopped calling because schedules didn't align. Life had been happening quietly while I was busy elsewhere. Around 2 a.m, I got out of bed and walked to the living room. Family photos lined the shelves. Smiles frozen in time. I realized how many of those moments existed without me fully present. I had been there in body sometimes, but rarely in spirit, always thinking about the next email, the next call, the next problem to solve. I sat on the couch and felt something unfamiliar. Grief, not for a loss that had already happened, but for moments that would never come back. Time doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about intent. It only counts what was actually given. The next day, I went to work again. Habit is powerful, but something had shifted. Conversations felt smaller. Problems felt less significant. I caught myself looking at the clock, not out of impatience, but curiosity. What would I do if I had more time? Who would I be if my calendar wasn't full? Weeks passed. I functioned. I performed. But the question followed me everywhere. During meetings, during commutes, during quiet moments at home. I tried to ignore it. I tried to drown it out with productivity. But it persisted, growing louder with each passing day. Then came the call. It was from HR, polite, calm, professional. They talked about restructuring, about transitions, about gratitude for my years of service. They said my name with respect, but the words landed heavy. Just like that, the role that had defined me was being prepared for an ending. Not immediately, but soon. I thanked them. I hung up. I sat there staring at my phone. The building didn't shake. The world didn't stop. Emails continued to arrive. Meetings continued without me. The machine moved on effortlessly. In that moment, the truth settled in with brutal clarity. My career had been a chapter, a long one, an important one, but it was never my life. And I had built my identity on something temporary, That realization didn't bring peace. Not yet. It brought fear. If I wasn't my job, then who was I? And had I waited too long to find out? When the title began slipping away, I expected panic to consume me. Instead, what came first was silence. Not the peaceful kind. The uncomfortable kind that forces you to hear thoughts you've been avoiding for years. I woke up each morning, unsure of what I was waking up for. My calendar, once crowded and commanding, now looked strangely empty. For the first time in decades, time wasn't chasing me. It was waiting. At first, I tried to fill the space the same way I always had. I woke early, dressed as if I were going somewhere important, and sat at the kitchen table pretending I still had somewhere to be. Old habits die slowly. I checked emails that no longer needed me. I scanned news headlines without absorbing them. I was trying to recreate a sense of urgency, because without it, I felt invisible. One afternoon, my wife sat across from me and watched quietly as I fidgeted with my phone. She didn't interrupt. She just waited. Finally, she spoke softly, carefully, the way you do when you're afraid the truth might shatter something fragile. She said, "You don't have to earn your place here." Her words landed harder than any performance review ever had. I realized then how deeply I had tied my worth to usefulness. If I wasn't producing, solving, leading, then who was I? It felt childish admitting that out loud, even to myself. But honesty has a way of stripping away pride. I had spent years being needed by strangers, while forgetting how to simply be present with the people who loved me without conditions. I started taking walks in the morning. Not power walks, just slow ones. Around the neighborhood I had lived in for decades, but barely noticed. I saw details I'd missed before. Gardens tended with care. Elderly couples sitting on porches, not talking much, just existing together. Children riding bikes with scraped knees and loud laughter. Life was happening everywhere, quietly, without deadlines. During one walk, I passed a small park where a grandfather was teaching his grandson how to throw a baseball. The boy missed more than he hit. The man smiled anyway. No corrections. Number. Frustration. Just patience. I stood there longer than I meant to, feeling something tighten in my chest. I wondered how many chances I had missed to be that kind of presence. That afternoon, I called my daughter. Not to check in quickly, not to multitask, just to talk. The conversation was awkward at first. We were both out of practice. Then she started telling me about her work, her worries, her small victories. I listened, really listened, not thinking about responses or advice, just listening. When she said, "Thanks for calling, Dad," this meant a lot. I sat there afterward holding the phone, stunned by how much that simple sentence filled me. I began noticing how different my days felt when they weren't measured by productivity. Some days were quiet, some were slow. Some felt purposeless on the surface, but underneath, something was shifting. I was learning how to sit with myself. That sounds simple. It isn't. When you've spent a lifetime outrunning silence, it takes courage to face it. One evening, I went through old boxes in the garage. Awards, plaques, certificates, evidence of a life well worked. I held them one by one, trying to feel the pride I once did. Instead, I felt gratitude, but also distance. They represented effort, yes, but they didn't represent love. They didn't hold laughter. They didn't hold hands during hard moments. They were symbols of what I had done, not who I had been. I kept digging and found something else. Handwritten notes, drawings from my kids, a card from my wife, dated years ago. It thanked me not for providing, but for believing in her during a difficult time. I sat on the garage floor and cried, overwhelmed by the realization that the moments that mattered most had nothing to do with my career. Yet they had been quietly waiting all along. I started showing up differently. I said yes to dinners. I lingered. Over conversations, I learned the art of being interruptible. At first, it felt inefficient. Then it felt freeing. Time stopped feeling like something to conquer and started feeling like something to honor. One afternoon, a former colleague called. He sounded stressed, exhausted, eager for advice. He asked how retirement was treating me. I laughed softly and told him the truth. I told him I was learning who I was without the job. There was a long pause on the line. Then he said, "I don't know who I'd be without mine." I recognized the fear in his voice. I didn't rush to fix it. I told him. Something I wish someone had told me earlier. I said your work can be meaningful without being your meaning. I said it's okay to care deeply without disappearing completely. I said success feels different when you measure it in moments instead of milestones. He didn't respond right away. When he finally did, his voice was quieter. As weeks turned into months, I began volunteering at a local community center. No titles, no hierarchy, just helping where help was needed. Serving meals, listening to stories, fixing small things. It felt humbling in the best way. Nobody cared what I used to do. They cared that I showed up. I discovered that purpose isn't something you achieve and then keep forever. It's something you practice daily. It shifts as you do. At 71, my purpose wasn't to climb anymore. It was to connect, to repair, to be present while I still could. I learned that love doesn't demand grand gestures. It asks for consistency, for attention, for showing up even when it's inconvenient, especially then. I learned that money provides comfort, but time provides meaning. And time once spent never returns. Some nights, regret still visits. I let it sit with me now. I don't push it away. Regret is just love with nowhere to go. I honor it by choosing differently today, by making calls, by listening longer, by saying, "I'm here," and meaning it. If I could speak to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him to work less. I'd tell him to live more alongside the work. To remember that one day, the office will forget your name faster than you expect. But the people you love will remember how you made them feel forever. At 71, I finally understand that my career was a chapter, not the story. A tool, not an identity. What really matters is presence, connection, love given freely without agenda, moments shared without distraction. A life measured not by output, but by impact. And the beautiful truth is this: it's never too late to begin living that way. As long as you're breathing, you still have time to choose what matters.